May 12th, and primarily that new update will have a new search refinement panel on the left side, and again the beta will start about 3 weeks before this date, but it'll have the refinement pane. It'll be a new pane on the left side that toggles between the navigation pane that's there as well as this new search pane. We'll also have an increment in the size limit for documents, so it'll go up to potentially 1 gigabyte. Today, as you know, it's 200 megabyte limit, so that'll be an increase. That also should have some impact in just general performance for uploading larger documents, so you should see some difference there also. And then we'll be introducing the new folder format, and that will allow searching within folders. The way that's being rolled out is that at that point, any new folders that are created will be in this new format. We're going to come through a little later and do a sweep on all the folders and make them the new folders, but there is an option for cabinet administrators also to take specific folders if they choose and convert those folders, and that's something that would be done in the evening or weekend work if you wanted to do that, so people aren't utilizing the folder. So it'll be a good update. And then 1.8 Indie Office is the next Indie Office, scheduled for March 25th. Next Friday, a week from tomorrow, will be the beginning of the public beta. So anybody that's interested, that information will be posted, and you'll be able to get a copy of that and start looking at that. And that's got some great changes. Probably the biggest that you'll notice is what we call an activity center. It's down in the bottom right, and it has some great stuff in it. So also in about a couple of weeks, middle of March, we will be starting a beta test specifically on the new metadata search. As you know, towards the end of last year, we put out the new full text searching. This is a replacement for the metadata search, and that will start. So anybody that would like to do that, please let us know. Send us an email. We can make sure that you get on that, and that will just be specific searching, testing on that search for metadata. So we appreciate that with anybody. And then we will be expanding between now and the next webinar. We'll be expanding the number of participants, and I'll be sending out an email on that a little bit later, just among the same set of customers. And as you know, we started kind of limited, but we're going to be expanding that as we can. So, and then also we mentioned the certification process. We are looking at some various options for some quizzes that we will implement, and again, we don't want that to be the overriding thing that you consider, but we want you to have some ability to make sure that you're getting the information all right. And then I just wanted to show something before I turn it over to Stephen. Stephen's going to be doing the presentation today, and I just wanted to bring up a page and ask you to think about this one concept, and that is, you know, what do I, as a user, what do I do the first thing in the morning? Is there something I do repetitively that if we could make some adjustments, would it help, you know, avoid that 1 or 2 clicks that you end up doing over and over and over again during the day? And so I just wanted to show a couple of examples. We can bring up that screen. For instance, and this is just 2 examples, but when you log in, you come to a page, and on the left side in the nav pane is workspaces. It's possible for us to, for instance, open this automatically, which shows all your recent matters. I don't have except one example here, but you might have, you know, several of those recent matters. And we could open that automatically. So if the very first thing you do when you start up and work is to do a search on the client matter, then this might save that click and let you just click on the matter that you want, because it's the one you worked on yesterday, so it happens to be right at the top of your list. And that might save you a click and so forth. And then also, once you go into a workspace, we find people that don't even know about this option. We could automatically expand that little menu on the left side when we open that workspace. And that menu gives me everything related to this workspace that I've recently added or edited, my email for this workspace, and then it shows the various containers, whether it's filters or so forth. And, you know, if we pre-open that, would that help? These are just two examples. But if you could let us know any ideas you have there, you know, the goal is to make it easier for people to utilize this. So be thinking about that if you get a chance, and provide us any input that you might have. So we appreciate you participating today, and we're going to learn everything you always wanted to know about workspaces. So Stephen, go for it.
That's right. Everything you've ever wanted to know about workspaces and more coming today. So just to give you a little background on what we'll be covering. First of all, so my name's Stephen Baird. I am on the professional services team with NetDocuments, helping with customer rollout onto the system, content management, and making sure the system is up to date and fully functional. Today, what we'll be going into within NetDocuments is the web-based view of workspaces, talking about what derives a workspace, how to organize content on a workspace, and ultimately how to get to your documents from within that workspace view. So we'll be going through that over the next, for the remainder of the hour. So the first thing that we'll talk about is how to create a workspace. I'm going to bring up just another screen here so that we can go through this. So here I have the workspace view in NetDocuments. There's a couple of different containers that are there, but we're going to start from ground zero here and talk about where this all comes from. The first thing to remember is that within NetDocuments, workspaces are not something that are created manually. Workspaces are metadata driven in NetDocuments, and what I mean by that is that within a specific cabinet, we have our custom attributes, and our custom attributes oftentimes will utilize a lookup table. When we decide to create a workspace, or we decide to turn on workspaces in a cabinet, we're electing which lookup table we want our workspaces to be driven off of. In most environments, especially in legal, we're going to be driving that off of client and matters. So if I want to add a new workspace, or if I want to create a brand new workspace for a new matter that's come into our system, all I need to do is simply add that matter to a lookup table, or to the matter lookup table. Once that piece of metadata, that field exists in that lookup table, at that point, a potential workspace has already been created to the system. And that way, with that piece of metadata, we can now navigate to it from the home page, as you saw here earlier as Lee was doing. I can click that matter, and because the potential on the back end to create that workspace already exists, as soon as I navigate to that matter, a workspace is created there. Now, there's a couple things that you can do to define what you want to be on that workspace in the initial view, and we do that using workspace templates. You may have already seen workspace templates before, but I'm going to just show you here real quickly what that looks like. So if I come into a cabinet page, I've already got here defined that my workspaces are going to be off of that client matter. On the cabinet administration page, I can define what my workspace templates look like, or what will be contained on those templates. So we already discussed about how once you've added that item to a lookup table, the potential to create a workspace is there. After that potential is there, when I first navigate to that matter number, continuing on with this example with client and matter being the driving metadata piece there, that workspace will then first pass through this template once I've first navigated to it, and will determine all the things that that workspace will be built around. So again, here I have it based on matter. That will show up automatically. I'm going to organize those by document types. That'll also happen automatically if there's already documents in that workspace. And then we've got the option to automatically create those filters or save searches or folders on that workspace page. We're going to go into the difference between each of those later on, but just know that from the template, we're determining how content will be organized once the workspace has been passed through this and been created. A couple other things that you can do here is you can determine what you want your filters, in this case, to be named. You can actually have multiple templates. For example, if I have in my firm multiple practice groups, I could create a template for each practice groups and then define different workspace filters, save searches, or folders that'll be automatically placed on that workspace when that workspace is first navigated to by someone in that practice group. So multiple templates is another option that you could have. And then once you get past this blue bar right here where we get to the template details, that's where it actually separates out, and I'm going to determine, so again, if I have multiple practice groups for templates, I'm going to determine what I want to display on each of those templates. That can be, again, predefining a filter that shows up. I can add a folder to a workspace template. I can add a saved search to a workspace template. I could add a web page even if I needed that functionality there. And then I can organize the layout so that once that piece of metadata has passed through our workspace template and ultimately created the workspace, all of this content automatically is organized on there. Now, one thing to remember though, the very first time I navigate to that matter in the workspace lookup, it's going to pass through the template and be created. If I then go back and modify my template in any way, at that point, that means that the workspace needs to pass through the template again. It does not automatically update that workspace view. To do that, there's a couple of methods that you can do. There's a few things, I call them, I have different levels, I call them different words than what's actually on the system for clarification. But the first thing you can do is reset the workspace. I like to term this a soft reset if I just select reset workspace. And let me actually navigate to that so that you can see what it looks like. Excuse me. So if I'm on this workspace view here, I can reset my workspace. Again, I call this option the soft reset. That passes the workspace back through the template and will update it, but will not change any customizations that you may have made to the workspace name or to the descriptions of the workspace. So again, that's more of the soft reset. It also does not remove the workspace from any favorites list. It keeps the actual entity of the workspace in place, but just passes it through the template again. Another way that I could get it to pass through the template again is actually delete the workspace. And that's what I call, up here it says delete, I call that the hard reset. If I do need to change, make sure that the name of the workspace is updated or the descriptions are updated, that's when I'll want to actually clear it from the system and then recreate it simply by navigating to that piece of metadata like I did in the very beginning, and that'll pass it through the template and everything will be updated there. A couple of things to note with the reset and with the hard reset or the deleting is that any custom folders, save searches, or share spaces will actually be lost at that time. There's a new function that will be coming in the system in the near future called a workspace refresh that will actually allow you to do an even softer reset, if you will, and it will actually keep the folders, save searches on the workspace afterwards. So just something to keep in mind there. So that is the creation of a workspace. Again, just key points to take away from there is that when a piece of metadata is added to a lookup table, the potential to the workspace already exists, and it just utilizes that template to pass through to build that initial workspace view. The next thing that we're going to go over is the different views that you have actually on the workspace level. So once I've navigated to a specific client matter, and I'm looking at this view right here, this is called my summary view. On the summary view, I have different containers that hold the documents and organize them to get to easily. So on the summary view, I've got 3 different types of containers and one additional option that I can add for a small extranet. The first thing that I have is the filter, and that's determined by this blue icon with the gear in the center of it. The second one is a folder, determined by this yellow icon, and the third is a saved search by the red icon with a magnifying glass. We're going to start with folder because folder is a very easy thing to comprehend. It works just like folders that you have on your Windows Explorer, on most most workstations will have these folders. The folder actually works as a location that the document is stored in. So when I upload a document to a folder, from an end user perspective, it's not actually utilizing any piece of metadata. I'm just saying I want this document to live in that folder. On the opposite end of the spectrum is going to be the saved search. A saved search is completely driven off of metadata, the same way that I would use the advanced search page, and I would determine what pieces of metadata would be a factor of documents that I want to be contained in that saved search. At that point, I can change anything. Once I add a document to the system that meets the criteria of that search, it would then appear in that saved search container on the summary view. However, when I upload a document, the location of the saved search that actually resides on the workspace summary view is not an option for me to select to save a document to, because at that point, I'm not actually selecting the location. I'm just deriving metadata to populate in that saved search.
Mic's not working. I'll start you. Mic's not working.
Can you still hear us?
It's cutting in and out. I don't know what's going on. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't.
Apologies if you can hear right now. We're having some technical difficulty with our microphone.
It says it's working now.
Okay. We think it's working now.
We think it's working now, so we'll continue on. If you are having trouble hearing, please post a comment in the chat window so that we can know. So continuing on to that, off of that topic, the save search does not work as a location to save a document to. It merely displays documents that fit the criteria that we've defined in that search and saved it to our summary view. The workspace filter is the most common and most popular way to organize documents on the workspace summary view because it actually works as a hybrid between folders and saved searches. It, much like the saved search, is metadata driven in the fact that we determine which piece of metadata we want to organize these documents by on the template. As you saw, in this case, it's by document type. So once we've added a document to the system that fits that, it'll automatically display in the filter, much like the save search. However, when I'm uploading a document through ND Office or different pieces of integration points, I actually can see the filters as a location to file documents to. So that way that I can use the folder functionality of selecting a location to save to, while also driving it off of metadata so that things are organized in an efficient manner to display. A couple of things I can do with the containers, and these are available for each of them. If I can start my workspace summary view off as collapsed, or I can expand it if I want to see all of the content that's available in each filter from the beginning. I can determine how many items I want to show. In this case, I'm showing up to 10 items. So you see I have 8 items right here. I have 13 items in this folder, so it gives me a next button to sift through those. But a couple of things I can do on folders and on filters is edit the criteria of what I want display. I can say if I want more items to display on the summary view, make that possible, as well as select different pieces of metadata that are tagged to each document to display next to it. So for example here, I'm going to go ahead and display my created by and my created date alongside with the modified date. And you'll see that those changes will automatically show up on the documents below that filter. Here we have the created and created dates. In the saved search, I can do something similar to that in just determining what piece of metadata I want to show. The other thing I can do from the workspace summary view is get to my workspace options list. We already looked at that and took a look at the reset workspace and delete. But from this workspace options list, I can also add folders, save searches, and I can also add another thing that can display on the summary view, which is a share space. A share space is a small version of an extranet that I can add a small amount of documents to right now. We normally recommend between 20 and 25 documents. that I can add a non-repository member, in other words, someone that is not utilizing an internal or external license seat, and allow them into this share space to see documents that I may want to display to them. And that also appears on the workspace summary view. Just while we're talking about extranets on the workspace, another way that I could accomplish this if I have a large scale of documents, or I need someone that's outside of my firm or business or company to be able to see an entire workspace, would be to add them as an external user. That would actually take up one of your external user license seats, but it allows me at that point to put that external user or an external user group with multiple individuals on the ACL or the access control list of the workspace. And then they could come in here and see the entire document. On the workspace summary view, if I'm sharing a document or sharing multiple items with an external user, it's identified by this individual here, this little man that appears up next to the document's metadata. That'll let me know that someone outside of my firm is viewing that, or outside of my internal users list. The last thing I can do with regards to the containers that display on the summary view is determine how I want them sorted. Now that actually is something that is defined on the workspace template as well. I can sort by alphanumeric, I can sort by modified date, and I can sort by created date. So it's just something to keep in mind when you're making these summary view filters. A couple other things I can do with my workspace options list is get a document report of what resides on this workspace. I can edit the profile values that are on the workspace, and that would be allowed to pass on to documents that are uploaded to the workspace in the future. I can also email a workspace link out. That way, someone who also has access to this workspace can get to here with one click with the email that's received. I already talked a little bit about modifying access to the workspace. One thing to keep in mind as I am modifying access to a workspace, or essentially putting other individuals on the workspace list, that is not passed on retroactively to items that are already in the workspace, with the exception of recreating the workspace either by a reset or deletion of the workspace. So if I were to change the access list here, one thing I would need to make sure I would do afterwards is pass that access along to the different containers, filters, folders, or saved searches, and then down onto the documents of the workspace. One other thing to mention here is that we would never want to give an external user, while talking about access, we don't want to give external users cabinet default access. The reason behind that would be not to allow the people outside of the firm to have default access to every workspace. There's some preventions in place that would not allow you to do that in the first place, but we want to make sure that when we are creating these extranet, it's an intentional design to place them manually on the access list for each of your workspaces, rather than passing them on to all of them in default. Another benefit here in the workspace options list is the email address. Every item, workspace, folder, and other containers have an email address that you can actually email content into. So this one right here, I could add this email to to my Outlook, so that I could email documents directly into this workspace. One other option that's available here is to do the same email address, but with the NM tag to the end of it. That means no message. It would only upload the attachments to the email into the workspace. And there we have the summary view of the workspace. The next view that you can look at is the list view. If I switch over to that, what I'm going to see is documents not organized by the containers, but a list of all of the documents that are a part of this workspace. In a list view, those list views are shared across the system. If I were to click on a single container on the workspace, I'd be taken to a list view of only documents in that container. If I run a search, my search results also display in a list view. If I'm on my recent documents, that displays in a list view. A folder will display in a list view. It's just a way that you can get the ability to select multiple documents, see different pieces of metadata documents in a list, and then be able to make actions on those documents. If I highlight one of these documents, I then see my details pane. In the details pane, it gives me a couple options to do. I can modify the profile data, I can see the versions of documents that may exist, any attachments if it's an email, the location of document, so if it was residing in a folder or in a workspace and what cabinet it's in. And then I can also get to a list of actions to do to a document. And that list of actions also can be performed in groups. If I come over here with the box and select multiple documents, those options are then available to perform them in a group. On that list view for the workspace, I can also see only documents if I want to, or just emails if emails are existing in that workspace. I don't have too many emails here, but that would be available if needed. If I want to ever change the metadata that's displaying in a list view on the workspace, I have this little gear over here that allows me to change the display formats, and I can add different pieces of metadata that I may want to see in this list view as available. The other thing I can do in a list view, I mentioned the details pane over here. Now these documents probably won't have any content in them, so it may be blank, but I can preview those files here. If I come over here to one with content, I would see that now appear, the new test. Again, not much detail in these documents as most of them are test files, but I could preview those in the list view as well. Going back to the summary view, we're going to talk a little bit now about searching within a workspace and how to find those documents here. So I'm going to head back and go to a summary view now just to display this. And now we'll talk a little bit about how different ways that I can search within the workspace. You'll notice right here with what we call this simple search bar, I've already got the workspace name attached in here. And if I were to search for a document simply from the simple search bar, it would only find content that's in this workspace, or it would restrict it to that. So here I have a document. I'm just going to search. I know I have a lot of test files in here, but I'm going to search in the name of the document for test. And you'll see that there in my cabinet, you'll have to trust me when I say this, I have a lot of test documents, but it's restricted it only to the documents that are a part of that workspace. If I want to go back and I want to do more of an advanced search, so let's go back to our summary view here. And if I want to go to the advanced search page, again, already in the simple search, it's got that parameter in place. If I come to my advanced search page, it's going to inherit the client and matter from the simple search bar. So I can come in here now and I can do multiple tests or multiple pieces of metadata that I may want to search on, and it would also contain that in the search space, in the workspace automatically. So that being said, we'll come back here into the workspace summary view now. A couple of other things just to touch on. We talked about in the list view that you can perform actions on documents and actions to multiple documents in groups. Those are also available in the summary view, but just in a different method. Rather than selecting them in the list like I would in the list view, I can hover over a document and right-click, and a menu of actions do come up. Now, if I wanted to add something, my more popular actions, I can customize my right-click menu and add, say, I like to link documents, or I want to see the history of documents. I do that frequently. I have email copy there, but I actually email internally quite a bit. So I'm going to put that on my list. I like to view the history frequently, so I'm going to put that on my right-click menu as well. And I can customize that list to be beneficial to me as an end user, so that by right-clicking on a document, I see the actions that are in place. If I ever need to get to more options or more of what I see in the list view, you'll notice as I hover over these, a little chevron icon appears at the far right end of the document. And if I click on that, I get an entire list of all the actions that are also available in the list view. Okay, so that kind of goes through all the different pieces of a workspace that we were hoping to cover today. We did want to leave some time at the end of the webinar right now for question and answer sessions. So we're monitoring the chat window right now. If there's any questions that you have or any piece of information that you'd like us to cover more in depth or go into, please feel free to add that into the chat window and we'll address those as they come up.
So Candy Hammond has
Okay, we have a question
a Candy.
Tandy Hammond. Tandy, if you want to go ahead and unmute yourself and ask the question, we can address it.
She typed it too. If you want to read it.
We have it typed here, but if you want to read it, that's fine as well.
She should read it too. I'm trying to unmute herself. Candy, you should be off mute now.
Hi, can you hear me?
Oh,
Hello?
I would get our speaker out there.
Hello?
There we go.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Hi. Thank you so much. So I have a cabinet. I'll just read you the question. I have a cabinet where the top level is associated with a working area, for example, payroll. The second level would be 2016 payroll. I'm basing the tiers when using the left-hand navigation pane. So you have to enter in payroll and then the next level down 2016 payroll. I also have a document type which is also associated with the top level, which is payroll. This document type has types January through December, as well as some additional employment codes for annual documents. The workspace is based on the middle tier, which is payroll 2016, and the document type shows up as filters on the page. This all works as you would expect, but when I go to try and adjust, so say I'd like to set the months to appear in the correct order or the employment code document types to appear higher up on the page, when I go into the template, it won't allow me to adjust, it won't allow me to set a specific template. So my question was, do I need to break the association with one of the sub-elements to make that work and then reassign it?
That's a great question, Tandy. So what we're dealing with here is multi-level attributes. Essentially, correct me if I'm wrong, Tandy, but it's a parent-child relationship of attributes that we're organizing on the workspace.
Yes.
So,
well, no, it's two child elements that we're trying to arrange on the workspace.
okay.
If that makes sense. So the workspace is the child, and the document types is the child of, but both are the type of payroll.
I see. And you're wanting to predefine those payroll document types, if you want to call them, on the template, but are unable to do so?
Yeah.
Okay. So what you need to do there, so remember, when we're dealing with a parent-child relationship, we have to define the parent before we can select the children attributes that are a part of that. So even in your scenario, you have two child attributes based off of one parent, and one of the child attributes will be organizing the workspace. One of them will be organized as filters on the workspace. And this brings up a more advanced component of workspace templates. But what you can do is, for each template that may have a different set of defined filters, we need to determine, or we need to apply on that template, the parent attribute. And that's done by giving a template profile. So say, for example, I've got, let's see, I'm trying to think of a way to display this without the configuration that you have. But say that I've got a practice group, just something to think about that might make sense to everybody. I have practice groups that each have a specific set of document types. And so I'm going to create a template. So say my litigation here, this is for my litigation practice group, and they have their own set of document types. Well, I can come into the profile template of the profile card of the template, and I can select the parent attribute of the child I'm trying to predefine on the template. And once I have that parent defined on my template, I can now select any of the child attributes that are associated with that to be predefined as containers.
Okay.
Does that answer your question, Tandy?
Yeah, it really does. Thank you. Because I thought it had to be, I was thinking the other way around. So I need to actually disassociate the workspace or the one that's defined. So payroll 2016, I need to kind of pull that away and then associate it with the document type for each specific. So that's the predominant parent-child relationship is the payroll with the document type, not the.
Correct. So just remember that if you have an organizing attribute on the workspace that is a child attribute to some other field, even if it's the same child or same parent to what's organizing the workspace, I have to define the parent before I can select the child attributes to be organized on the workspace template. And that's done with the workspace template profile.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much. That's great.
Thank you, Tandy.
Thank you, Tandy.
So we've had a few questions from a few different people about resetting workspaces.
Okay.
So can you again distinguish between the hard reset and the soft reset as well as a refresh?
Absolutely. So a couple things on here just to remember. With the level of reset that we're working with, that's just terminology. The soft reset and the hard reset, that's terminology that I use to help understand the difference between them. Just remember, when I'm resetting a workspace, think of it on the back end that the workspace, after it's been created, there's an entity that other things are driven off of. For example, if I favorite a workspace, that entity that I favorited now appears on that end user's favorite workspace list on their homepage and other places. That entity will always stay there. If I reset the workspace or do that soft reset, the reset that I have right here, that entity stays intact, and all I'm doing is passing that through the template again, so that if I've made changes to the template, that'll be applied to my workspace once it comes out on the other end. But because the entity is still intact, that workspace that maybe has been favorited will stay on an end user's favorite matters list, or will stay on their homepage and be there. One other thing that we've attached to that entity is the workspace name. So if I come in here and customize my workspace, I can change this to say whatever I want. And I can change that so it appears. Because we understand that customization needs to be retained for many reasons, end users might have customized their workspace to better understand what it is, we don't pass that through the template with a soft reset or with just the standard workspace reset. So that too will stay intact with the entity and pass through the template with that soft reset and come out on the other side with those customizations in place. But with this reset, the one thing that will always pass through the template and always be applied on the other end is the organizing containers. So if I've had any custom folders that are not on the template or custom saved searches that are also not on the template, those do not make it out on the other side of that reset. They are taken away because they're not a part of that template. However, because I have, in this instance, I have workspace filters being automatically created on the template. If I have a document profile to a document type and that's my organizing filter, then that will make it out on the other end because those will be automatically created with the documents that are profiled there. So from that reset that exists here, just remember everything that is organized on the summary view is what is changed as it passes through there. But the entity on the back end that retains that in the favorites list, as well as custom changes to the name and description, those will make it out on the other side.
So the caveat is that if it's been customized, a new folder's been added, whatever, you have to be careful doing the reset because it'll wipe those out.
Mm-hmm. Now, if I'm going to delete my workspace and recreate it, or like I called that hard reset, that entity on the back end that keeps that attached to favorites list and with the custom name and descriptions, that entity goes away and has to be recreated with a new entity on the back end. So that hard set does remove workspaces from favorites list. It does give the original name of what was in the client matter lookup table, and will reset that descriptions, as well as everything else that's a part of the soft reset with custom folders and safe searches. Okay.
And there's also the refresh option, which right now should be available through the API.
Correct. So we have the workspace refresh, which is the softest of the softest resets, if you will, and that is available right now through the API. It will be available in the near future through the web interface. But what that will do is add anything that's been changed on the template and leave all custom items. So if I've added a folder on my workspace that is not on the template, that remains untouched with the refresh. Same goes with the safe search and anything else that I've added to the workspace after that template was created. So it's really going through and just checking for changes on the template and adding them to the workspace rather than removing things.
So Candy says, will new folders still be removed from a workspace after a hard reset? Assuming they're on the template, or will they behave more?
Great question. So if a folder or a safe search is defined on the template, that will always make it out on the other end. Now, one thing to keep in mind, though, is that if I do that hard reset or the deletion and recreation of the workspace, I'm creating a brand new folder. So any documents that may have been while in that custom folder that was created before, remember, documents are organized in there as a location. So those documents will have been unfiled from that previous folder, and a new folder that was on the template would be created, but those documents would not be in that folder because they had not been assigned to that new folder created off of the template. So something to keep in mind there with the hard reset.
Okay. Michael has a question, so let's unmute him and hear from him.
Can y'all hear me? This is Michael Shacklet.
Yes, Michael, we can hear you.
I was listening, and I saw that we could, eat an external user license and add them to a workspace. Once we add that external user to the workspace, I have two questions. The first question is, if there are existing documents in there, it sounded to me like you had to reset the workspace to get permissions for all those documents. Is that correct? You there? Hello?
Can you hear us now?
I can now.
Okay, apologies. We're having some audio issue. So you may recall that adding access, so if I add an external user to the workspace level, so I click workspace options and modify access, the only thing I'm doing is granting access into the initial view of the workspace, but that is not being passed down to the container, so filters, save searches, folders, and the documents. Now you made a good point that I can reset the workspace, and then as that workspace is passing through the template and access is being applied, that access that I've defined on the workspace level will then pass down to those containers, filters, folders, save searches, and the documents. So in the initial pass, if I'm adding access to the workspace level, all that is done is given that external user the ability to come to this level. So I'm going to collapse and say it can come onto this view, but they at that point actually don't have access to the filter or to the documents and won't see them until that's granted explicitly. The reason for that, just to let you know, is because while we're adding them to the workspace, we don't want default access granted to more items than not. So
that's kind of what I thought. The reason for my question was that we're doing something, but we're doing it through share spaces, and I think that we're going to continue to do it that way. I just wanted to make sure I wasn't missing something with this ability to grant external users access.
Yeah.
Yes, Michael, the share spaces is a much simpler approach to sharing, but and that's why we don't necessarily push the external usage, but it can be utilized. It's just a little more complicated, and people have to make sure they understand what they're doing so they don't expose the wrong things.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We will.
To clarify, the filters don't inherit the external.
Correct.
So, yeah, and when you do a reset, it doesn't push that access to the rest of the.
That's a great point. So yeah, just to reiterate what was just said is that external users do not ever get automatically populated onto filters. So you can pass that down into the documents, but these filters will only show up to an external user if you explicitly grant access to them on the filter level, which can be done by selecting a filter. So if I select accounting right here, just like I saw workspace options, I now have workspace filter options, and I can modify access here.
And the reason we don't push those down is the assumption is that a filter is an internal type container.
Right.
So, yep.
And that is that modifying access on the filters is filter per workspace, correct? It's not global.
Correct.
That's what
Only on the single workspace that it lives on. It will not pass that access to every workspace that that same filter is on.
Thank you.
Thank you, Michael.
Good questions.
So we've had two questions about how do you find workspaces that have folders and save searches that would be lost if you reset it?
Great question. So if I reset a workspace and a folder goes away, that folder is no longer in the system. Okay, so I can still get back to the workspace. So say I do just a soft reset. Let's go back here. And I do that soft reset. Because that entity is still in place, I can still navigate to that client and matter and come in here, and that workspace will still be there. If I do a hard reset or delete, I'm going to actually do that right now. This is a test workspace, so it's okay to do that. I'm going to do a delete, and you'll see here, you'll get a message that tells you the save searches, filters and web views will be there that are on the template, but share spaces, save searches, and folders will not. So documents will not be deleted, but the folders, save searches, and filters will be. So you'll notice I've got this GTH folder and a recent doc save search that is there. I'm going to delete this now. It might take a second to process because I did have a number of documents on here. But what you'll find is even after it's deleted, if I need to get back to this workspace, I just do it the same way as the first day that this workspace was created. I'll use the navigation pane to get back to where I need to go. And this may have been a bad workspace to choose this for because I had so much on there, so it might take a second.
Yeah, so there's no way to find, basically there's no way to find workspaces that have those custom folders. You can't locate which one has a workspace or which one has a custom folder, which one doesn't.
No.
No way to do that, so you don't know beforehand.
Yeah, there is no way to know that beforehand.
Look at it.
There are limited capabilities from an administrative standpoint through the API to be able to mass delete workspaces. So don't worry too much about that ever occurring of going through and deleting a workspace before you know there's a custom item on there. In the web interface, you will need to navigate to that workspace and then select to delete or reset it. So I'm just going to come in here. You saw that I deleted that. I'm just going to come in here because that still exists in the lookup table and recreate that workspace. And this was the hard reset. So you'll notice the name will change, the description will be cleared, and then it'll come back missing that folder and that save search. Okay. And again, just to reiterate that, once that folder or that save search have been cleared because of a reset or a delete, they are gone from the system and cannot be searched upon again. And there is no way to search for those prior to the customization, or excuse me, prior to the reset or the delete without going to that workspace page.
You could expand it and show the documents. They're still there.
Yeah. So even though I did the reset, these filters were already created and the documents still lived on the system. But because these blue filters are on the template and driven from documents being assigned to them, because the documents are still there, when I recreate the workspace, those filters will come back and the documents will retain their organization.
And if I had that custom folder on a workspace and I want to keep that folder, I'd have to move it somewhere else, then reset the workspace and then move it back, right?
That's correct. That's
There's
correct.
no way to save it.
Right. And the only way to search for those documents that were in that folder is to search by that client matter, any other criteria that might have fit that.
That's correct.
That's all the questions we have so far.
Okay.
Good questions.
Very good questions. Thank you for those. We're getting towards the top of the hour here. So if there are any additional questions, feel free to either raise your hand in the webinar or type those into the chat meeting, and we can answer those.
We appreciate your time while we're waiting for someone that may want to give one of those. So thank you, Stephen, for your presentation here. And then we look forward to the next webinar, which is March 10th. And that will be a review of the marketplace and APIs and third-party integrators and some of that kind of information, which we think will be very helpful for you. If you haven't looked at the marketplace, it grows on a daily basis, and there's quite a few options and different third-party things that have been created out there, and they're being created. So we look forward to that one. That'll be a good presentation by Travis on the 10th. So thank you. Any other questions that we received?
Let's see. In the list view, the number of documents to view on a page is 20. Can I change the default?
Yes, you can. Good question. So if I switch back to the list view, I can come in here and you'll see right now, mine is actually defaulting to show 50. I can change that when I get into the workspace to go from 10, 20, 50, 100, 200, and 500. But from a default standpoint, that's actually set on the user account level, and it's set for all list views. So if I come up here into my settings menu, and I go to my application settings, so that's my web-based setting, my web view settings, at the very bottom of this window, I have my search results to display. And remember, the list view for a workspace, for a filter, for a folder, for recent documents and search results are all just a search result. So changing this setting would actually also change that for the workspace list view. The maximum I can do is 50. That's just to have the most efficient load time. If we had that set much higher, it would take a little bit longer to load list view. So 50 is what we've determined to be the most efficient from the highest value. But if I change this to 20, and then I go ahead and I reload that list view, you'll see that now I've defaulted to 20 over here in the right-hand corner, and just those 20 documents are displayed. But I can always change that a number all the way up to 500 in a single list view.
Okay.
Thank you for that question.
No, that's it for now.
Okay, that looks like all the questions. We thank you very much for your participation. It's been a great session, and thank you for participating. Have a good day.